Uh, well, this, some of you are looking around, I think you've already, this is going to be old hat. I think some of you have read my presentation in penalty, maybe. Okay. Yeah. You can leave now if you want. Well, I think I tried to develop it a little bit as it's gone on, but
I can't remember.
well, this is the year of faith, and so instead of writing a pastoral letter, as bishops are urged to do, I figured I wouldn't have that much to say. I'd go around and talk about it instead. So that's what I'm trying to do. And this is called the geography of faith. And it's because the idea is that in the scriptures, it seems to me we have given us the map of the human life. The map of the human life. That it's very interesting that one of the most offensive things about Christianity, and indeed even before that about Judaism, is that one people out of all the peoples of the earth could be chosen by God as elect. That He would work through this one people that they're special. This is, in our age of egalitarianism and multiculturalism, this is intolerable. In the modern age, the idea that there could be this kind of selectivity is just virtually intolerable, and that we must all more or less be somehow or other equal, all different faiths and so on. And even more intolerable is that one man could be God's avenue into our hearts. Why should there be just one? Maybe one, yes, maybe He is one among many, but that He is the one. This is an astounding thing. When I say that, I'm thinking of that scene in the Passion of the Christ, in our Lord very early on in the agony in the garden. Remember, He starts to, and then Satan says, "How could it be that one person could redeem the whole world?" And I don't know if you remember that scene, but as I say it, my chills. It's kind of like of course, it's ridiculous. One person couldn't possibly, and yet that's what we're asked to believe, and that's what our faith is. That out of the chosen people comes the chosen one. Well, if Jesus is indeed the chosen one, and that He is, and the other thing about that is that He lived at a particular time and place. He didn't just float above time and space and just kind of become an amorphous human being that's got a little bit of here, a little bit there. He's very particular, very situated in Palestine in the 1st century AD, born under Caesar Augustus. Suffered under Pontius Pilate. That little detail on the creed. Why in the world? Let's think of that. All around the world for 2,000 years, people have been repeating the name Pontius Pilate. I mean, it's kind of strange. This obscure, backwater place, here's this man that now everybody in the world kind of knows who he is. And the reason they do is because of Jesus Christ, but He was there at that time in that place. And so if we are to know Him, and He wants to be known, He wants to be known and loved, then we must know where He comes from, the world out of which He emerges. And that is, of course, the world of the Jews, the world of the Old Testament, the world as it's described for us, especially in the Word of God. Now, if the whole point of this is of the Scriptures, then, and of Jesus is revelation, the disclosure. There's a word I don't know. I've come to have an increasing sensitivity to that word, disclosure. Disclosure. When we come to know another person, when you have a sense, you meet somebody, you sense this could be a friend. This could be a friend. That the beauty of friendship that's just dawning, and you think you have this sense of great possibility, but it all hinges on disclosure. You can't shake friendship out of somebody. You can't go to somebody you just meet at a party and say, I want to be your friend, tell me who you are. You can't do that. It all depends on the discreet disclosure of who this person is. And in friendship, and this is important in Christianity because friend is the Eucharistic word. That's when Jesus calls us his friends, at the first Mass. So to me, the words are exceedingly important. I'm Irish, and the Irish didn't have, as you know, much political power, but the words are real important. And the idea that this is where Jesus discloses his friendship. I mean, they could have sensed it, they certainly knew it, but he discloses it unquestionably. He says, I have called you friends. And this is at the Eucharist, that he wants to disclose who he is. He wants us to know who he is. And so the whole of the Scriptures is this process of disclosure. And we have to be the recipient. We can't force disclosure, but on the other hand, I can't force you to attend to my disclosure. I can tell you every secret of my life, but if you're looking at your cell phone, what's the point? You know what I mean? This disclosure is this mutual disclosure that all of the world is. This is the great thing about science, modern science, is that you have this receptivity to the endless disclosure of nature, that nature will reveal itself to our inquiry. Isn't that interesting? It's not opaque, it's not hidden, it is disclosive, this disclosure. This is all a part of the revelation of God's mystery, everything. But anyway, that's where we come down here, that if we're destined for friendship ultimately with Christ, and if the Eucharist is our destiny, this we could say is the incarnation of our destiny, I guess, because the future and the past are all there together in the present. This is the Eucharist. Everything past, present, and future come together, and we're there. And it is the destiny to be befriended by Christ, and therefore to be befriended with one another. And then to know, if we're destined for that friendship, then the idea that God has a plan for us, has a plan for our life, and that he will disclose that to us. He won't leave that opaque. He will not leave the design of the human life, the divine design of human life, opaque. He will disclose it. He will disclose it. And I think that's what we have in the Scriptures over and over again. But what I'm suggesting in this is that if we look for the geography of the geography of faith is about the map of the human life. Where do we come from? Where are we now? And where are we going? And that this is, I think, what the Scriptures afford us. This is by no means so exhaustive. This is just one aspect, one way of looking at the Scriptures. It was like a diamond. You can take a million different angles to see the beauty of it. And this is just one way of doing that. But I want to begin tonight. So what these conferences that I'll be giving will be the suggestion. I'm not the Pope. This is not infallible teaching. the suggestion of the map of any human life, but in particular, with particular relevance of the Christian life. So this is the year of faith. That's the Pope Benedict XVI, which was just a great idea, it seems to me, this idea of just kind of orienting everything around that business of faith. I find myself, when I preach on Sundays, for example, I'll start to prepare the homily and say, wait a minute, how can I think about faith on this? How does faith affect it? You start thinking about it. It's a really, really beautiful thing. So the idea that we want to start with, fundamentally with Abraham, as we call him in the first Eucharistic prayer, Abraham, our father in faith. Abraham, our father in faith. Now, let's imagine that we were going to have Mass at noon, okay, middle of the day. And we said that first Eucharistic prayer, so there at the middle of the day we would say, in the heart of our worship, the part we can do nothing better or higher, we'd say, Abraham, our father in faith. But if we gathered that morning for a morning prayer, every single day of the year for centuries beyond knowing, at least over 1,000 years and probably more, we would have said, and we will say every day, the oath He swore to our father Abraham. He promised that he would save us from our enemies. He promised to show mercy to our fathers and to remember his holy covenant. So this is at the beginning of the day. The church throughout the world holds up Abraham again at the very beginning of the day and makes reference to Abraham and the promise to Abraham. Notice that word is repeated twice. Promise, promise. It's the day which suggests the beginning of the world to me. The promise has to do with what is to come. What is to come. So that the prayer of the church always begins with the reference to the promise to Abraham about the future. The day is about to begin. So then we begin the morning that way. Midday we have, let's say we have Mass, our Father in faith, Abraham. At the end of the day, at evening prayer in the Magnificat, we say, he has remembered his promise of mercy, his promise again, the promise he made to Abraham and to his descendants forever. So in the year of faith, it seems to me that we have a good reason to focus on Abraham, our father in faith, and see what we can learn from him. And so we'll go back to tonight. We'll want to touch on this, and I'm going to really reiterate some very simple things time and time again as these conferences unfold. Because I've been thinking about this stuff for about 20 years. I had a course in theology that just changed my life on all this stuff. And there's some very simple things that if you get them kind of into your head, they flow over into other things as well. So let's go back to God's promise to Abraham. Let's consider what that promise is in reading number 1.
Now the Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth will be blessed.
Well, as I said, this is that statement of that astounding claim that the Jews make, that they're the chosen people, because Abraham was the chosen one. I will make you a great nation. This is chapter 12 of Genesis, and the next part of Genesis is all devoted to the unfolding of this promise to Abraham. So, and then he says, in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. So this is just an absolutely open-ended. It's not qualified. It's not limited. You're the one. You're the one. Now, what is Abraham? What kind of token does he give Abraham that this is going to happen? Nothing. Leave the land of your father and come, and I will, all future tense. I will. Either you trust or you don't. So the idea that Abraham comes into our view as a man with faith as the background right from the start. So let's go on now to see what the elements of this promise to Abraham are, and we have the first one in reading number 2.
Abram said, O Lord God, what will you give me, since I am childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus? And he took him outside and said, now look towards the heavens and count the stars, if you are able to count them. And he said to him, so shall your descendants be.
Count the stars if you are able to count them, and we'll probably be able to count them out here. But there's a little. That's an interesting image. I was at the Ross Perot Space Museum in Dallas this year. It's just open. And they have this section in there where you can go. It's about the sky. It's a little room about this size, maybe kind of a circular room. And then there's pictures next, writings along the wall about the sky and the stars and all those things. And then you can stand under this oval-shaped circle ceiling, and you look up, and it's the view from the Hubble telescope.
Ooh.
And it just, even as I think of it now, the beauty of it almost makes you fall to your knees. It just so, you're so close to it, you know, you're just, it's kind of just on and on this star field, it just without end of beauty and magnificence. It's just mind-blowing. And so that's what I thought of. You think of that when you see this, look up at the stars, Abraham. That's how many descendants you have. Count them if you can. Count them if you can. But you know, it just occurs to me thinking that, contrast to that thing in Dallas, I remember in the 1961-62 World's Fair in Seattle, my cousin and I went up there on the bus. Big deal, we were just out of high school, like sophomores, I think, in high school. We got to take this trip by ourselves on the bus to Seattle. It's a big deal. And that was the Space Needle was new, you know, landing. So the first thing we were going to do was go on the Space Needle. We get there 7 in the morning. This one thing opens, and the Space Needle was fogged in for about 20 feet. So this was not a good, you know, not a good omen. But I remember one of the things we went to then, or maybe I'm mixing it up with Disney. I'm not sure. Maybe some of you have seen this, but maybe it's Disney. But we went in this room, and you sit down in these chairs. It's a circular room. You sit down in these chairs, reclining chairs, and it's all, you sit back like this, and they light up the ceiling. And they show the way the sky has changed down through the centuries. First, you know, there's this, it's almost all light, you know, 2 million years ago. Then it's like at the time of the Romans, and there's less. And then it gets to the Middle Ages, and then gradually the stars kind of, as it were, disappear until you get to the modern age, and it's radically decreased because of all the light from the Earth. You know? I've never been able to get that out of my mind. It seems to me to be pertaining to this point. Look at the star, count the stars if you can. Well, you know, you could ask whether we even look up at the sky in the city. I know when I live in the city, I can watch the sun go down now without any artificial light where I live now. It's a wonderful thing. But if you've got a street light right outside your house, and if all of a sudden, do you look at the sky? But you know, that's a physical thing. But it also speaks to this not obeying God's invitation. Look at the sky. Count the stars. This is the promise. It's as if we're cut off. That our technological achievements have, you might say, limited our visions to such an earthbound extent that we're not capable, or we're not used to, or we don't look up and take in the promise of the eternal God. Just that very image is, I think, suggestive of our own condition. So this is the first aspect of the promise to Abraham, is that I am childless, and his wife Sarah is barren, as we see. And so the promise to Abraham is the impossible promise of a child. Though therefore Isaac is the child of the promise. The child of the promise. So that's the first aspect of the promise to Abraham, is the promise of descendants. But there's more to it than that, as we see in reading number 3 and 4. Number 3 and 4.
On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, "To your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt as far as the great river, the river Euphrates." Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will surely take care of you and bring you up from this land to the land which he promised on oath to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob."
Well, the first reading is from chapter 15 or something like that of
Yes.
Exodus, and the last is from the end of the book of Genesis. And both the one from the end is from Joseph, saying that the promise has begun to be fulfilled, namely that we will have a land for your children to live in. If you're going to have kids, you got to have some place to put them. Now, again, this is this kind of, I think, if you want to think of it this way, the kind of the incarnation. This is laying the groundwork for the incarnation of God's Son. Time and space God is beyond time and space. Time and space belong to God. God does not belong to time and space. He is absolutely other, absolutely transcendent. Now pagans would have a big problem with this. It's not clear in paganism that time and God seems to be caught up. God seems to be caught up in time. But God is the giver of time, the author, the creator of all things visible and invisible. And time and space belong to Him. So that the idea that He will give Abraham descendants is that He will give him time. What are your children but your extension in time? Literally. I mean, your daughter and son maybe has your ears, maybe has your spouse's nose, maybe has your smile. Obviously, they're their own people, but they are also your extension in time. And that God, in effect, is saying He has time for us. But He's saying that to Abraham. I have time for you. I know you don't think so. You think you're running out of time. Indeed, that's what Abraham tells him. We're getting old and there's we're running out of time. And in fact, God keeps saying, no, I have time for you. I will make time for you. And then he goes on to say, not only will I make time for you, I have space for you. I have a place for you. A place for you. Think of how much, in our own life, how important that is. How absolutely fundamental it is to know people that have time for us and will make room for us in their life. It doesn't happen every day. And isn't this what the heart longs for, is for people to have time and space for us. And indeed, isn't that what we want to do for others? We want to make room for them. We want to give time for them. And so you see, the incarnation then is that Jesus actually comes at a particular time and in a particular place. Not just any time and any place, but that time and that place. And so this is all true. You could say God is true to the shape, the form of the promise to Abraham. It's kind of the working out, the creative working out of this original promise. And I would invite you to, I don't know, frankly, I don't know very much about other religions. It's a shame. I really wish I did. I hope to be able to learn, because as a bishop I really need to know as a priest. But the little I do know, which I can, with a respectful attitude, try to see what one can learn and appreciate others. But this idea that it seems to be so strikingly unique, this promise to Abraham and the way that works itself out in history. It's going to have to be. History is going to have to be valuable, first of all. Time and space are going to be, they're important to God.
How?
They're important to God. So therefore, the idea, for example, in Buddhism, as I understand it, that everything is an illusion, and the thing to do is to have an empty mind, right? To free yourself from illusion and from desire. Well, that is to say that, in effect, one way to think that would be to abstract yourself from time and place. Everything's an illusion, just empty mind. Abstract myself from time and place. Well, it's hard to see how that would fit with this geography of faith that we're going to consider. If time and space are so important to God, then maybe my time, my space right now is important to God. And instead of abstracting from it, rather to enter more deeply and profoundly into it. Now, at this point, I would say that where the Buddhism would come in is that indeed what keeps me from doing that is a great deal of illusion. illusion about myself, that I don't know myself, and that a lot of what I think I know is just pure illusion, self-willfulness. And so in that sense, to the extent that I can peel that away and get down to what's really happening in this time and this space, then that's helpful. Am I making any sense? Now, the other thing right away that I think is, I just was reading a very good book, a little book on centering prayer, which I've been somewhat skeptical of for some reasons, but this little book I read was really quite sound, I thought. But I did notice this, and maybe this is the case more widely, is that there's a great interest in spirituality now. Culture, that's the word that's kind of, you can see that in the grocery store, spirituality. Everybody wants to have a spirituality, which is, I guess, good. I would say we have a spiritual life, and put that way probably. What I noticed is that this book on centering prayer was very much focused on me and my relation to God, and the illusions in my life, and coming to grips with who I really am, and so on. And all of what was said was true, but somehow or other it didn't widen out, because what this promise to Abraham sets you in right away is that this relationship to God is never just personal. It's always part of this promise to involve descendants and history. Time beyond my time. Time before me, time after me. It doesn't begin and end with me. And so if it begins with me in the sense that for the first time, if I'm serious about conversion, if I feel myself like St. Paul, knocked to the ground, and that life is literally going to begin anew, then it begins in that sense personally, but it's really taking up the same beginning of everyone. It's a part of this journey of the whole people, not just me, not just me. And that's why when we consider this geography of faith, it is the journey not of an individual. Here's another little way of thinking about this whole thing. By the way, those of you that have read, I haven't, because I feel so ignorant. The older I get, I wish I could go back and learn the things I should have learned before. But I just was listening to some series of lectures about the Iliad, and it struck me very, very powerfully the way of thinking about that text.